synergies in social housing dwellings and comparison from
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm presenting the study we performed focusing on social housing in Australia. And this presentation is mainly presenting the synergies between climate and indoor thermal conditions in social housing. In Australia, over 3 million people are suffering or are under poverty line. And energy poverty is driving the situation that households cannot afford energy services for home, for heating and cooling purposes. And this is a topic of attention in Australia these days, considering the impact of climate and urban overheating. We know that low-income households are at risk of global and local climate change, and they are actually are exposed to extreme outdoor and indoor environmental conditions. Energy poverty has a significant impact on the quality of life, on indoor environmental quality, thermal comfort, thermal discomfort, and heat stress, especially during heat waves and weather events, also impacting their physical and mental health, and which is also, in the worst case scenario, leading to mortality and morbidity. Looking at literature all around the world, we know that there is an association between poor housing quality and health outcome, especially when we look at vulnerable populations who are living in low-income families who are living in these type of settlements, which are mainly suffering from lack of ventilation, poor indoor air quality. Insulation is another important issue which is happening, and lack of proper insulation in social housing dwellings, and presence of mold condensation and damp is another important factor in terms of housing quality. Despite the importance of the topic, very little is known in Australia, and there is also less evidence-based study looking into social housing. So the objective of this work was to monitor indoor air quality and environmental condition in New South Wales in social housing dwellings, and investigate the nexus between outdoor climate, quality of housing, health, energy, and the general well-being of occupants. And so the methodology we look at, we monitored 106 households over a year. We measured temperature, humidity, and carbon dioxide every 30 minutes. We also performed questionnaire survey asking about occupants' energy bills, health, comfort, and satisfaction. We also performed right here, right now, a thermal comfort survey during summertime. We clustered dwellings from coastal zone towards inner suburbs of Sydney, towards Western Sydney, and also down to Western regions, Bathurst and Dobbo. So we classified based on climate classifications, basically. In terms of the characteristics of the dwellings, there were more public and community housing, and there were a few low-income rental housing included. Characteristics of residents, in terms of age, over 40% of our participants were between 20 to 60 years, and their average age was 45 years. Employment rate, occupants were more retired or were on disability pension. Income was for a single occupied house, it was about 400 per fortnight. And construction, mainly large number of them, over 70% of them were built between 1975 to 2000, which was right before introduction of energy efficiency codes in Australia. Insulation in a very small number of households reported that they have some sort of insulation, all single glazed, and our samples were more apartment buildings, about 60%, and then the rest was semi-detached or detached houses. Mold and condensation were observed in about 22% of the residences, primarily in bedrooms, followed by wet areas. This is a specific example is showing that um, when the building was occupied, relative humidity was really high, and this was the case in the coastal area. And when corresponding carbon dioxide when it was occupied was really high, well above the recommended threshold. Looking at health outcomes, residents reported mental health, about 20% of them, 28% of them, and among them who actually expressed mental health issues, mainly they were suffering from depression and anxiety. And there we had more problem or more self-reported mental health problem in lower income brackets compared to the rest of population involved in this study. In terms of physical health, airway, respiratory, cardiovascular disease, followed by allergy were the most dominant reported health problems. There was no, so looking at the regions, because as I mentioned, we had three different clusters from Sydney urban to Western Sydney down to Western region. There was a difference between the reported health problem from Sydney urban area towards the Western Sydney. So people living in the Western area are suffering more or reported more health problems. Minimum indoor air temperature was as low as about 5 degrees Celsius. You can imagine how cold it is. And during summertime, it was up to around 40. We looked at the threshold temperature for safety and health, and we found that these houses are in general suffering, and there are a significant amount of or number of hours below the minimum and well above the threshold for maximum temperatures. This slide is showing you the distribution of or the number of hours above certain threshold. And as you can see, towards the western area, people are suffering for, and there are more number of indoor hours, outdoor number of hours above a certain threshold. In carbon dioxide was above 1,000 in 80% of dwellings, and the maximum was 5,000 ppm. We found a clear pattern between the regions in terms of number of hours, overheating hours indoor. And again, we took threshold temperature looking into the difference between the clusters. And as we move from eastern suburbs or urban area towards western, there is a clear pattern that people living in western are suffering more. Nighttime overheating, which affects sleep quality, affects mortality rate, and especially in older population, is a significant mental health issue, is showing that people are again suffering from nighttime high temperatures exceeding 28 degrees. Looking at again, distributions of indoor temperature in different three clusters is showing people in Western Sydney are exposed to wider range of temperature compared to people living in urban areas, and people living in Western Sydney or Western regions are suffering for more or exposed to higher indoor temperatures. Again, this slide is reinforcing what I mentioned before, showing that people living in Western Sydney showing more correlation between outdoor air temperature and indoor air temperature. So there is a clear pattern between that as we move from urban areas towards Western Sydney and then going towards Western regions, namely Dubbo, for example, there is a significant increase or proportion of time or the amount of time that people are exposed to indoor overheating. And this is consistent and clear pattern with outdoor temperature distribution and cooling degree days that we found in a previous study. And this is a specific slide is showing you the distribution, a spatial distribution of maximum indoor temperature from eastern to western areas. Extreme temperatures between the night, between the sites at night. Again, there is a clear pattern that people living in western regions are exposed to higher indoor temperatures at night. We found upper acceptability limits for 80% satisfaction based on right here, right now thermocomfort survey. And also during summer 2019, we asked participants how they feel right here, right now. And we measured temperature and then we try to find the temperature band that they feel comfortable. So 26 was the temperature, the upper limit we found. And that year we had 25% of hospital admission because of heat exposure during summer, and primarily for residents living in western areas compared to urban sites. So coming to the conclusion, the key message from this study was that vulnerable populations are more frequently exposed to extreme heat and higher indoor temperatures, which obviously have impact on their health and well-being. And people who are suffering from energy poverty are more at risk of climate change, both local and global climate change. They are living in living in suburbs which are more exposed to extreme events and exposed to higher outdoor temperature in our case. Buildings were built primarily before introduction of building codes in Australia, and that shows that insulation was very low in those buildings, and that was showing us together with other elements from building envelope that building quality was not as good as to protect occupants from outdoor overheating. And the other important finding based on this study was that people living in Western Sydney are more vulnerable to heat waves, mainly because of the rapid urbanization in that area, and basically they are more exposed and are at risk of both indoor and outdoor overheating. And coming to the final conclusion is that all the attempts to urban heat mitigation has to be combined with building adaptation technologies or strategies to improve building quality, because building quality is an important factor, especially looking at vulnerable population who don't have financial support or don't have access to control their basically their house energy needs for heating and cooling purposes. Thank you.
Thank you, Shamila, for very interesting presentation. Is there